This is the story of a director, or maybe a cinematographer, or maybe a YouTuber, maybe someone who just wants to be inspired. This person watches movies, commercials, and music videos and sees beautiful visuals. They think, I want my stuff to look that good, but where can I get ideas? Where can I get inspiration? If only there was some sort of database of frames from these beautifully shot projects that I could look to as a frame of reference. And then one of their friends sent them a link to FrameSet. The filmmaker replied, "What is FrameSet?" Well, first you should know that FrameSet is the sponsor of this video. Next, you should know that I recreated this shot from inception, and I'm going to show you how. But first, let me tell you how I used FrameSet to make this happen. FrameSet is an all-in-one library of shots from thousands of movies, commercials, and music videos. For filmmakers and cinematographers to consolidate ideas for their lookbooks or mood boards, it's also a great tool for practicing shot recreations. Apart from practicing, one should never use it for outright copying. However, there are unlimited possibilities for informing composition choices, lighting ideas, color palettes, lens types, shot types, and frame sizes. One can use it as a lookbook reference guide for their cinematographer, crew, or project stakeholders. Likewise, one could use it as a rough storyboard for their commercial, music video, or film. FrameSet even has a subset of motion clips for camera move inspiration or reference. When looking for references in FrameSet, you can browse by titles of movies, commercials, and music videos, by credits, by equipment, or by community sets. In order to find the perfect shot, you can either type a specific prompt or choose from over a dozen filters, including time of day, location, shot type, lens type, number of people, or even by choosing a specific color, among many others. You can even upload images to find similar matches. And within FrameSet, you can create your own sets, or what you might know as mood boards, and label them with any designation you can imagine, be it project names or general inspiration. You can also specify if you want to search just from a specific medium, whether it be movies, commercials, music videos, or all media. You can also choose between motion and still libraries. After spending time with FrameSet, I knew that I'm really drawn to dark scenes with high contrast pools of lighting and exaggerated mixed tones of warm and cool lighting. In this particular case, I was hoping to find a high contrast interior sunset scene that I could practice emulating in a shot recreation tutorial. I felt comfortable publicly recreating a shot from the movie Inception rather than recreating a smaller artist's work for this video. This shot in particular stood out to me, so I decided to leave the past tense and walk you through how I'm recreating the shot. Stay to the end to see the final results. But first, let's break the shot down. Okay, so before I recreate this shot from Inception, I'm going to do a quick breakdown of what's going on here in the shot. Now, first off, when you look at the wide shot from this scene, you can see that by and large, the main source of light is really just very bright lights, probably HMIs of some sort, from outside the window, shining in, giving us this nice backlight, and giving us some of these streaks. And then likely they either used some sort of bounce for her face or some sort of heavily diffused source. I've seen in the behind the scenes imagery of Inception that they commonly would use Fresnel lighting with large 4x4 frames of diffusion, which is very common on film sets, especially in the film days. You need to get higher levels of lighting ratios in order to properly expose the film. I will not be recreating in this type of environment, and I will also be using an upstairs room, so I won't be able to shine light through the windows, nor do I have a light that's bright enough to get this level of exposure that competes with the exterior light. So likely what I'll be doing instead is stopping down for the windows so that they are not overly hot, and then having a 650 bicolor GVM light inside in order to get this rim light. Now, because I'm stopping down for the windows, it will not be this hot on her hair, so I'll have to compensate with some smaller lights as much as I can. Because of the angle, I'm not going to be able to get this streak from that same light, so I'll have to have an additional light for that. And then for sort of this key or fill light, depending on how you want to label it, I'll be using a soft source, likely from an umbrella style softbox, and a 60-watt LED bicolor light. Now, my assumption for this warm look is that they used a 250D daylight balanced film, and then they had their lights balanced to 5600 Kelvin in order to get this warm color temperature orange look. And then there might have been some extra film processing to get more of a reddish tone. This being the case, when I do my grade, I'm going to be using Dehancer, and I'm going to be using the 250D Kodak film profile, and I will be balancing as such. I will then export it as a LUT and use it on my reference monitor in order to closely approximate this look. So now that we've quickly broken down the shot, let's dive into recreating it as best we can.
Hey, so doing things a little different this time, I'm gonna actually kind of walk you through each light and what it's doing, just so it's not, and then I did this, and then I did this, but so that I can actually show you my thought process of how I arrived at capturing this look from the movie Inception. So let's get into it. So it's funny, going through FrameSet, I was looking for one of these sort of high contrast sunset, dark and moody scenes. And I recently rewatched the movie Inception and was just loving the way it looked. So I was like, I want to recreate that. And I saw this shot and I was like, oh, I could do that pretty easily in my house. The one thing I way underestimated is the fact that this shot is shot vertically. It is just incredibly difficult to rig this up. I tried a ton of different things and eventually I caved in and just put it on a C-stand here. I sort of made a rig, but the problem was it was bouncing around. So I ended up having to put a sandbag on it to sort of weigh it down. The irony is I was looking at the shot from a still image, and then when I rewatched the shot in the movie, it was handheld. So I was like, you mean somebody was just lying there on their side the whole time? So I actually tried an iteration of that, but the problem was I had to be the person holding her hand in the shot. So I ended up making this contraption with a C-stand to get that shot. Just throwing it out there, if you don't have the right tripod or rig, vertical shots, kind of a pain. First things first, we got our backlight here. I have CTO'd the windows for that warm sort of sunset look, and then I've set my light to 2700 Kelvin, and let's go ahead and strike this bad boy. This is a GVM 650D. It's a big bright light. Woo-wee. I'm not sure how much I use this in the final take, but I've got a flag here to shape the light in such a way that it's not falling so much on her face as it is sort of her back and shoulders. It was something that I used a little bit more in the original iterations of the shot, but not as much for the final shot. Here I've got sort of my fake curtain, just a cardigan hanging on a C-stand, hoping to get some of that light sort of shining through and bouncing off of the cardigan. Okay, next up I've got my key light, or you could call it a fill light, since technically if you're counting that backlight as sort of an upstage key light, you could call this a fill light. What this is doing is just getting that nice soft glow on the right side of her face. This is just a Sirui 60-watt bicolor light set to 2800 Kelvin. The lesson learned with this light was don't overthink it. I originally put another layer of diffusion on it. It just wasn't looking right on the skin. It just didn't have a nice soft glow like in the movie. And I was like, let me see what happens if I remove it. And I ended up removing it. It looked perfect. It looked exactly what I was looking for. So sometimes don't overthink it. Don't modify before you see what your initial result is. Next up, we've got that little hot spot sort of at the corner of the frame. So what I did was I got an 100-watt light and put a snoot on it. Because my GVM 650 is so powerful, you're not seeing a ton of it, but it does make for a nice little kick in the final image. And as you can see here, I've got sort of that backlight coming in, making for a perfect wrap around her hair, shoulders, etc. And then last but not least, I've just got a little kicker here behind the head. This is meant to give some of that rim backlight behind her head. You know, in an ideal situation, this backlight would just be way brighter and would be blasting through the windows, but I'm on the second story, so there was no way of doing that. And then sort of a plan B would be to have another, 60 watt or something of the like boomed in such a way that I could get a brighter light and more directional on the back of her head, because I just wasn't getting it as directional as I wanted from the 650. It was sort of spilling over everything, but in the end I compromised. I just used a little kicker light. It's not perfect in the final shot. You can see it's not quite bright enough, but it gets the job done. Okay, so that's the whole setup. Set dressing could always be a little more perfect. The lights at my disposal could be better. I worked with what I had here, so given the time constraints and the number of iterations that we did, I'm really happy with it. Hopefully at least it was fun to see the process of putting it together. It's funny when you finish a shot like this, it looks so simple. I look at the setup and I'm like, that's nothing complicated, but sometimes you have to figure it out to figure out what the simplicity was. And you know, when they do these shots on a movie, it might be 30 minutes, but it's a lot quicker. They don't have all this time. But when you're recreating, sometimes it gets a little discouraging because you're just taking so long and you're like, why is this shot so complicated? But I think what's really cool, and the takeaway is, you guys probably won't be recreating this exact shot. You know, this is not really a tutorial to do exactly what I'm doing, but I think you're going to learn some of the thought processes. And I think that the act of practicing these kinds of shots, not even necessarily copying them, but practicing them, is a really great learning experience for what's going on with the lighting. You know, the use of hard light, the use of soft light, where there's shadow, where there are hot spots. It's a really great learning experience, and I hope you guys learned something too.
So here are the shots compared. These are never perfect, but I'm happy with the results. And I owe my wife big time for graciously taking the time to lie on the floor and be my lovely model. Thank you all for watching, and if you like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and find me on Instagram at ScottJeske Film. Until next time,